This is a call to order of a regular meeting of the Personnel, Pension, and Insurance Committee of the MDC, Monday, February 26, 2024. Mr. Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Are there any public comments relative to agenda items? Once again, are there any public comments relative to agenda items? There being none, we will move to item 3, approval of meeting minutes of January 24th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
Motion approved. Second.
Second. Are there any, is there anyone abstaining or? Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Moving to item 4, this is a very simple item here. It's the appointment of Commissioner Wolf to the 457B Deferred Compensation Committee. He has kindly consented to sit on that committee. This matter really pertains to funds that essentially are the employees, and in effect, it is essentially a savings program, for lack of a better term or phrase. Bob, do you want to make any comments about this or not, or no? Or?
No, that's absolutely right. The 457 committee meets quarterly. We have our investment advisor come in and explain to the committee members, which are representatives from each of the unions. Finance and HR are there, and we talk about the investment vehicles that are available to the employees, how they're performing. That is our fiduciary duty. We also talk about education. That's another large part of our fiduciary duty to the employees, to make sure they understand what's available. But the funds are none of the MDC funds. These are only the 457 deposits from the employee into their own personal account. We happen to have a meeting this Wednesday, and Commissioner Curry was the district board's representative, and this agenda item is just replacing him because of his new responsibilities with Commissioner Wolf.
Anyone else have any comments, concerns? There being none?
Chairman Taylor, this is Commissioner Wolf. I just want to thank you for the appointment and look forward to serving with everyone. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. That being the case, we will move to item 5. Jamie, I believe you're on.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jamie Harlow, Director of HR. What is before you on agenda item 5 is consideration for approval for new job specifications, which are all under our local 184 bargaining unit. The first one is the water pollution control crew leader. We currently have 2 crew leader positions, one currently at an LT10, one currently at an LT12. This proposal creates one multitasking crew leader with also a higher level certification, which will help with succession planning as well. So this has been something we've been working with the union to get to, and we have kind of reached agreement on that. The next 2 items are I've referenced these, I know, in a number of other conversations that I've had here. They are the operator in training, entry-level operator positions that we've been trying to get. Ultimately, it would allow us to hire individuals who don't have the full certification, so we can get more entry-level individuals, get people into the water and the wastewater side, train them how we do things here, and help them also get their certification. So very excited about those job descriptions as well. But if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to address them.
Anybody have any questions?
First, I make a motion, we approve all.
Right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Then I have a question.
Okay. Ask your question, please, sir.
Jamie, on the control and plant operator in training, And I read through all these and they're all great, and I'm glad to see we're moving in that direction. Any thought to not say in training, just say operator trainee?
It's actually this, it seems to be the industry standard to call them operators in training. So
Really?
that's kind of how we,
I'm so
came up
used
with
to the
that name.
state, it's always trainee,
oh,
so.
really? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if Tom Tyler can speak any further.
Doesn't matter,
Yeah.
in training just seems awkward to me, but I'm just curious.
I think we were just following the standard, but no, I get the point. It is a little awkward.
Anyone else? This has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. Being the case, we move to item 6. We can treat those in the same fashion unless anyone has any questions or concerns. Jamie?
Thank you. I actually had brought these last year. This was a result of the negotiations that we had with 3713 over the past couple years to create the multitasking job descriptions. These engineering tech series is probably the most complex area in terms of number of jobs that we combined. So, you know, as we've kind of been living with it for about a year, we've decided we kind of need to loosen up some of the recruitment minimum qualifications and wanted to just add back language that we've had in previous job descriptions, which creates a little bit more flexibility in a tough recruitment environment where it says or equivalent combination, so that if someone doesn't have an associate's degree, for example, but they're otherwise qualified, it would give us some flexibility to hire those individuals. So that really very modest changes to this series here. So again, if you have any questions, I'm happy to address them.
Any questions? There being none, may I have the appropriate motion?
Motion to approve item 6A, B, C.
Do I have a second?
Second. I second it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, yeah.
Passes, all right. Item 7, consideration of potential action, amendment of risk management administrator job specification.
Thank you again, Commissioners. So this amendment is actually a result of a classification review. The district has had a classification review system for a number of years. Wasn't used a lot over probably the last 10 years. It was newly re-engaged in union negotiations with Local 184. So this is actually an exempt and excluded position that was brought up for classification review. I did the assessment and ultimately found that it really should be slotted differently. It should be slotted as a EE14. It's currently an EE13. This would also put it in line with all of the other administrator roles that we have here at the district. So again, just a product of the classification system, looking both internal equity as well as external.
When you say external, are we comparing this to comparable jobs?
Yes.
Or what?
Yeah, that's always what we're looking at when we are looking to create new jobs, or if we're looking to see where we are from a benchmarking standpoint. I'm looking at other similar jobs on the local market, and it really fell in line with the EE14 as well.
Anyone have any questions? There being none, may I have the appropriate motion, please? Second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Hello.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
I think Commissioner Desai just entered the meeting.
Okay. Yes, would you please?
Commissioner Desai, was that you that just entered the meeting and spoke up?
Yes. Sorry, I was trying the other line. I was on hold until now. So
Okay, no problem. Glad to have you here.
Okay. Item 8, consideration of potential action with regard to the climate study. I think if you will notice, I took the liberty of providing a brief outline as to what an employee climate survey is about and the various aspects of it, and things you can include or not to decide not to include. UConn, I guess, was in 2017, did a fairly extensive climate study, and I believe they were supposed to do one like every 5 years or something, but they have not done one since then. What this does is that it gives a company or an institution a chance basically just to get an idea of what its employees are thinking. And whatever other matters that it feels may be relevant and that fall within the purview of the climate study. I would think that what we would think about is looking for a request for proposals. I believe that's the appropriate way to do this. And to survey them and to see who basically we feel would fit our needs in order that we could proceed on this matter. I would also think probably that we should give careful thought to thinking carefully about those things that we may either want to cover or not cover within the context of the climate survey. So, any comments, concerns?
Yeah,
Yes?
can we handle this internally? I mean, I know you mentioned about going outside, but we don't think we can handle this internally?
No. I think you've got to have someone that essentially is viewed by the employees as being disinterested. And I think it just stops you from creating minefields and things like that. We can have the involvement, and we would look for the involvement of staff. But I think just to give our employees a high level of comfort in terms of their ability to respond and to make their comments, I think that it behooves us to indicate to them very clearly that this is something that is being handled for us, managed for us by an outside party. Great.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd ask Attorney Myrtle, would it be more appropriate with an RFI or an RFP?
I mean, this is John Myrtle. Ultimately, if you're seeking procurement of services, then the RFP would be the tool. If it's information, so, similar to what the technology committee went through in preparation for an RFP, then the RFI would be the appropriate starting point.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions, I would move that we move forward with asking administration to develop requests for RFP and then forward it back to the committee for review.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, is there any special reason why this is being generated now? If I remember correctly, there was some meetings between the leadership and the unions. Did that go all right, or was there something in those meetings that leads to this, or?
The meetings with the union leadership went well. But I think that as a body, I think it's important that we ask our employees, that their employees get a chance to voice their views. No one's looking for anything. We just want to know. We want to ask. And I think that it's appropriate for us to conduct, in effect, a sort of an audit of our workforce to see where they are, what they're thinking, and what have you. Mr. Curry?
I was just going to add, you mentioned the word audit, but that's simply how I refer to it. As it's an audit, and it's going to identify our strengths and our weaknesses, and we can correct those weaknesses. And it hasn't been done, my understanding, in like 20 years. So there's nothing other, I don't think there's any other reason than it's time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think, I'm sure it was mentioned at PPI before, but also at the district board level when we were discussed funding this initiative, that we hadn't done this for a long time. That's been a long time since we surveyed them, and that the contracts were new as of last year, signed last year. Scott, is that my?
It's 2023.
Yeah. So we just thought at this point in time to see, contracts have some new language. I know that both the unions wanted stuff, and Scott got some things, I think, done. And so just to see how that's working out too. But I think mostly we said that it hadn't been done in a long time, and that we wanted to get an idea of how they felt. I agree with the chairman that there wasn't anything in particular that the bargaining units had to say about anything in particular about this. And this was more or less an idea that just came out of the fact that we had new contracts, and we got a lot of new employees. We've seen a lot of people retire in the last few years. So it was just a good way to get a sense of our relationship with the employees and how they feel about the district. So.
Just one final question, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Payne. Do we have an estimated cost for a survey like this?
At this point, no, but I would think that within the context of our looking that we can probably come up with a number that fits in with what we think is appropriate. It is not going to be massively expensive, but I just think that given the fact that I think that we should do this, always keeping in mind that basically we want to control expenses, but also at the same time, we want to make sure that we at least give our employees a chance to tell us what they're thinking and how they think the institution stands, that it's a dollar well spent.
And then the last question I have, Mr. Chairman, is through you to our CEO. Does a study like this take up a lot of time for staff? We have we have so many things on our plate right now with the way they've changed with the Clean Water Act and all the other activities. I'm just wondering what kind of involvement will be required by staff to complete something like this.
Mr. Chairman, through you.
Sure.
There's only $50,000. So depending on the magnitude of the RFP, if this is done correctly and is done, Jamie and both Rita are here. They've done these before, so probably the most important part of the process is developing the questions. Jamie could speak to that, but that's the meat of the process, is developing the questions. What is I think it's been said here a couple of times, what is the board the committee looking to address? And then if it is a third party, then that third party would develop those questions, and you'd want to survey all of the employees. You don't want to survey some of the employees, or we got 3 different unions and we have E&E, so you want to survey all of the employees and give everyone an equal opportunity to speak. So there'll be some involvement for sure with staff. I just don't know at this point, Commissioner, how to answer that without understanding what the scope of the RFP is.
Does $50,000 even is that even enough to address where they have to communicate with every employee plus the setup? I got to wonder how far the $50,000 is really going to get you. That's it. No other questions. Thank you very much.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was my understanding, and Dominic, you're probably correct in one point, but The 50,000 was the starting money, the seed money to kick off the reaching out for developing an RFP and then finding out what the costs are. I fully expect we're going to have to go back, if that's the wish of the committee, to request additional funds. But in my mind, and, you know, Scott and his cabinet, I think, did a wonderful job. I've been involved in negotiations at the local, state level, Board of Ed level for a lot of years. And I've never, ever seen a group, and the union should get credit for this as well as Scott and his cabinet, but consolidating of job specs is like absolutely phenomenal. And they've been in place for several years now. And while we've heard, we haven't heard that there's problems. We've heard through creation of other job specs and hiring additional staff, it's needed to be tweaked, and that would be expected. But the climate study will also see how all those new changes that the district board has approved, and how they're really working out in terms of how both the management and the labor look at it. So depending on the cost, I would say I think it's worth it. If we get costs of $1 million, then probably not. But I think it's worth at least looking at to see what those numbers are.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just a question to clarify. So we don't want to send out an RFP that we don't have the money to execute, right? So I guess the question would be, if we want to understand the market and is the 50,000 enough to achieve the goal of the RFP? Would it make sense to do an RFI first?
That was,
And that way we can understand, is there enough money to actually do what the committee so chooses to investigate? And then, because I would hate to send out an RFP that says we're looking for a market survey, bids come in and they're $80,000, $100,000, and then we say we can't award it. So if that, I don't know if that makes sense, but if.
I think an RFI probably be more appropriate at this juncture.
And I would just say this, Jamie has done a great job, but I just want to clarify that the positions you just approved. So the first group, the water treatment group, that was negotiated in the union contracts. It's just that we had a change of leadership and we had to negotiate the details. So that's the details. And again, so this benefits not just new employees, but it benefits existing employees as well. So it's important to know. Sorry.
So
May I have this?
Before you,
So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Commissioner Desai.
Yes?
So, thank you. While we are trying to figure out whether it could be $50,000, it could be $100,000, $1 million. Is it, and it looks, and what I'm hearing is that the staff has done that study, and it's out there, right? I'm not sure how recent that study is, but can the first step be that whoever, we hire, look at that particular study that has been done by staff and have, some coordination with whoever leadership, they identify. First, maybe they identify, if there are any gaps in what the study, the staff, when they did the study, is there any gap in there? Or do they see something glaring that should be addressed, right? I think, at least in my opinion, that would be a more, thought out step rather than starting everything from scratch, right? Because something has been done. And maybe, the consultant can come in and look at their report and give their opinion as to whether there are gaps or not, or sufficient, or whether they have to do any additional investigative work. Maybe I'm just using that word, but like meetings or whoever with the leadership. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, are we talking about the management reports as opposed to the climate study? Because those are two separate things. I do not believe the staff has done a climate study. The staff here did a fairly extensive study of the various components or parts of the MDC, which they reported on in 2-hour length meetings on by various departments. But there was not a climate study per se. That is an animal of a different color. And I don't think that was done by staff for that matter. So we're talking about an entirely different animal.
Is that semantics, or is that can staff differentiate between those two and see what additional or whether there is any correlation between these two studies that has been done and one we are looking at?
No.
I'm just trying to see if the existing study that's out there, if it is of any value and if it can help us in reducing the cost and the fees.
And I guess my response is basically at this point, no. You're mixing apples with oranges here. Climate study is separate and distinct from the work that was done here with regard to staff and reporting on the various operational areas within this company. Those were management studies. Those were not dealing with the areas that are covered by a climate study. Those are two separate and distinct things. I'm sorry, does he have any response or not?
I guess not.
No, I'm just trying to see if staff has any comments on that. Are there any overlapping tasks or that are totally apples and oranges? I'm just throwing it out.
And I guess my response to that, unless someone has something that indicates otherwise, there is no overlap. We are not talking about reviewing the operational areas in terms of how they're functioning. We're talking about a climate study where essentially you are asking the people that work for you, what do they think? What are their concerns? That was not part of the management study that was done by staff in various operational areas. And I think it's important that we keep them separate and distinct.
Apples and oranges.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Based on the conversation and Scott's comments, I would change my motion to from RFP to RFI.
Right?
A second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
That being the case, moving on to item 9, discussion of utilization rate of outside consultant contractors for the past 10 years. That is something that that I thought that we should take a look at. I don't know if anyone has had a chance to go in any detail. At this point, there's a lot of information there. And if we want
if I may, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair. So there is a lot. Bob did a great job simplifying it in the short presentation, and the details of the numbers that he utilized to create the short presentation is within the body of the spreadsheets. I just want to caution. It's a lot of information. Nice, Bob. There's a lot of information there.
Something you said.
And the questions were pretty specific in terms of looking at by, not just, over the last 10 years, but look at by department. So I caution the data. When you look at the data, we did this in two ways. We showed the overall question, how much have we changed, how much have our consultants versus our employee count gone up or down over 10 years? And that's important because, as you know, you approved the budget based on cost centers. So you'll see, and it takes a lot more detail to get there, but you'll see some departments have gone down in staffing and some have gone up because we've changed, and I'll use utility services as an example. We've shifted a lot of our inspectors, construction inspectors, to utility services because the majority of our work now internal to the home is being done by our staff and not by consultants. So we'll go through the information for you quickly tonight, but I think it takes a broader discussion to get into the details to really understand what these numbers mean by department, is my point. So, Bob?
Sure.
Chairman.
Thanks. So the overview that Scott just described it's just 7 quick pages. Since there's a wealth of information here, I just wanted to orient you to the data that you have in front of you. And then should you have any specific questions, I guess John Myrtle aggregates commissioners' questions for staff to respond, and we could certainly be ready to respond to any specific questions you have on this wealth of data at your next meeting. But let me go over what you have in front of you. We're going to cover the assumptions of the data. We're going to look at the company-wide trend. That includes capital and operations. And then we're going to look at capital individually and operations individually. And then I'm going to describe the 26-page handout that you have in front of you. So, you know what? Sometimes I have better luck. Julie, there's only 7. I don't know if you can just advance it. Oh, here we go. I think I got it now. So here's what we have. We have a 10-year history, 2014 through 2023. We just finished 2023, so these are 10 complete years of payments made from the consultant services account. Now, you may remember 4 years ago, we changed our system. And so some of the cost centers in the old system are different. Well, they all are different than the cost centers in the new system. So aggregating all this information became pretty complex, but I think we have it in manageable terms here. 10-year history, 14 through 2023. We took, because if we looked at all the payments, there were a lot of payments. Probably you would have had a spreadsheet twice as big as this 26-pager if we included every single payment. So what I did is I only included payments to vendors whose 10-year spend was greater than $25,000. Because in a given year, we don't have to enter into a contract. We can spend up to $25,000 in just 1 year. And so I excluded all those vendors that appeared that had $25,000 or less in total for the 10 years. So in other words, I wanted to show you the larger spends. And even when I did that sort, there's still over 9,000 payments made out of this consulting services account. The data sources, I probably did this more for my benefit. The legacy system is there's the account for consultant services. We have 6 years of data, 2014 to 2019. And then our new system, there's the account number. We have 4 years of data, 2020 to 2023. So this is what we found. Remember, but we're trying to say, take a look at, hey, are we reducing staff at the expense of increasing consulting services, right? There's always going to be an appropriate balance between how much we spend on consultants and how much we spend on permanent staff that we have to have on board and pay benefits for. But what we found when we did the 10-year analysis is that not only did we significantly reduce staff, but we significantly reduced the consulting services spend too. And that's what you see here. The bullet point says the personnel counts are 20% less. And if you look at the top of the chart, you'll see in 2014, it was 548, is that what that says? Or 549 employees. And in 2023, it was 438. So that's what that first bullet point says. Hey, we reduced 111 employees over that 10-year period. That's 20% less people. So now let's take a look at the consultant spend. That's the bottom of the chart. So the consultant expenditures are actually 27% less than 2014. And you'll see at the bottom of the chart, in 2014, we had a $15.7 million spend. And last year, we had an $11.4 million spend. So the first bullet, it highlights everything in blue, shows the reductions in personnel and consultant spend for the last 10 years. Reducing 111 employees and reducing consulting spend by $4.3 million. I thought it was interesting, I added a second bullet there to do the same analysis for the last 9 years, because in 2015, you'll notice at the bottom of the page, we did consulting spending of $18.6 million. It was actually a lot more than the $15.7 in 2014. So I just did the same analysis for the 9 years, 2015 to 2023. And that came out very similar, 21% less employees, 119 employee reduction, and 39% less spend on consultant services. And that's why it's shown in red. So that's all up, right? That is all the company. That's on our operations side and on those services we do for capital. I'll tell you, the vast majority of the capital expenditures and consultant spend are engineering firms. They provide engineering service, planning, and design. And you'll see this borne out here real soon. So here's the capital spend. I put it in bold in the first bullet point. On the previous slide, it's everything. Capital spending is 95% of that 10-year spend. So of the total consulting expenditures spent in the last 10 years, 95% were for, putting pipes in the ground, all of our projects. And they were primarily engineering, design type expenditures. But I did the same analysis. We had, remember when we come to you every December and we say, this is the staff we'd like for you to approve in our budget, and we always split it out between operations and capital. Operations are both the water utility operations and the sewer operations together, and capital are those employees that are going to be charged to our capital projects. So what we have at the very bottom of the slide you can, or excuse me, well, the capital personnel is at the top of the chart on the slide. You'll see that in 2014, we had 114 FTEs, our budgeted positions that were charged to capital projects. And if you bring it all the way to 2023, last year, we had 41 for capital projects. So that's 73 less employees, or 64% reduction. So let's take a look at the consultant expenditures, and that's the bottom of the chart. We had $14.8 million spend in consulting services in 2014, and that's been reduced to $11.1 million in 2023. But the important takeaway, I think, from this slide is capital's very similar to company-wide, right? We have less employees and we're spending less on consulting services. But the important part is 95% of our entire spend on consulting services are for the projects that we do year in and year out. So let's go ahead and take a look at the other 5% because I have the data here. In 2014, we had 104, I didn't turn the page, sorry. We had 435 employees dedicated to operations. And then last year, that, excuse me, that number was 397. And similarly to the company-wide and capital, our spend has actually gone down too, from about $800,000 worth of spend in 2014 down to $300,000 worth of spend in the most recent year, 2023. So the second bullet up there, the blue, the personnel counts are 9% less, 38 less employees, and 59% less expenditures. That $500,000 reduction from 800,000 down to 300,000. And then I have the red numbers up there too if you want to do the 9-year like we did on the other two slides. So that's the data. That's the data that you're going to see in this handout. But I just kind of wanted to orient you to the handout because we spent a good deal of time trying to make it as user-friendly as possible.
Bob, I'm sorry, don't mean to interrupt you, but you're about to move on to the next part of this. So at the very beginning, you mentioned the $25,000 type contracts that, you know, under 25,000, and I understand why you don't want to report on also they're smaller projects, but as a total in spending, and as a, you know, I mean, is there some way that you could, you know, like combine all those and get them on there so that they could be analyzed in the same way? In other words, if there were 10 projects that spent roughly $25,000, it's $250,000. So what were those spent on? I mean, I understand completely the design projects. You know, AECOM designed the tunnel. I get it. You know, I mean, that's millions, okay? Sure. But, you know, for the smaller contracts, were they purchase of materials or equipment, or were they services that more or less expand the services of the staff?
Well, I think it's a little bit of everything, yeah. But to answer your question, I have all the data. I mean, it's just so large, and I'm happy to aggregate and create a separate report if you want for all of the data that I left out and give you totals if you like. I don't think there is meaningful if you see a $750 charge in 2015 for a vendor that we never used again.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not even looking for the information about the individual vendors. I'm just saying that, you know, as a total, how much did we spend under that heading of contracts, you know, that are executed that are under 25,000? just consider that one big project or something and say,
I like
we
it.
spent that one, that much that way, and then roughly, was spent on materials or services.
It's
That's
a great
no,
idea,
that's
and
it,
I'll add that to the follow-up list. That's easy to do because I have all the data, particularly the way you described it.
Yeah, and I think you're right not to carry each one of them. Like you said, there may be one that's less than $1,000. I'm not interested in that, but just as total overall,
Yeah,
to answer the same question that you're answering with all the big projects. Just to
No,
add
it
that
makes
in.
sense is that, hey, if we're looking at this, what did I say it was, $159 million worth of spend on the capital, and then another 8 million, I think it was, on operating. Say, okay, you've showed me 167 million, but what is the value of the little ones you left off? That's easy, and I will get that for you.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So here's the last slide. What I think Julie passed out this handout. I thought the first thing you would want to take a look at is by vendor. And so the first 2 pages are the capital consultant spending by vendor ranked for their 10-year total. And you'll see right there at the top of page 1, CDM Smith comes in at the highest at about $50 million. Remember, these are the charges charged to consultant expenditure for the period of time 2014 through 2023. And you'll see the individual years amounts. So that gives you an idea of the big ones we're spending on. And you'll notice that the top, well, most of these are engineering and design and planning service companies. Then-
Bob, and I'm sorry if I may, Mr. Chairman. Just to add to Bob's, and I said the story, right? There's a story here in everything Bob has identified in numbers. And just look at CDM in 2014, actually in 2008, their contract was, above 10 million, $12 million, right? To do the work that they were doing for the MDC. We have slowly over time, in 2008, they were doing all the preliminary design work for all of the clean water projects. And that was by design and that was fine. And now we have taken back MDC staff, although there's less MDC staff, we've taken over control over the management of the design of our products. We don't have CDM designing preliminary designs anymore. And so now you see, their contracts are now under $4 million a year. So that's a big, that logic is a big reason why we've been able to not just reduce our own staff, but we've been able to reduce the need for consultants because our staff is doing the work. So, sorry, Bob.
Sure. And then the next, what is that, pages 3 through 17, what is that, 15 pages, it lists the project numbers. Remember, with capital, they're not cost centers. We actually charge consultant services to the individual projects. So the next 15 pages just lists the project and then lists the vendors that were paid consulting services under it. And so that is not as interesting, I think, as when we go to page 18, you'll see the same, well, on page 18 and 19, this is what I think people wanted to see. They wanted to see, hey, how many folks did we have in operations and how much did we spend in consulting services? So, and then they wanted to look at by cost center. So what I did is I took those summaries on the first page of the presentation and I broke it out by cost center. And if you want to look at the total line of personnel at the bottom of page 19, you'll see those are the same numbers for operations on page 3 of the presentation, I believe. And so following that page for the personnel counts by cost center are something similar to what we did with capital, is we ranked the spending from high to low for the vendors that had at least $25,000 worth of charge over the entire 10-year period. And on page 20, you'll see I mean, this is a much smaller number, right? This is only $8.8 million. But the top consultant that we spent was Milliman. You know, they do our actuarial valuations for our pension and OPEB and the like. And you'll see that we spent $1 million with them over the last 10 years. That's at the top of page 19. And then following that, just like we did with capital, showing the vendors by project numbers, following that, the last 5 pages are showing the consultant spending by cost center. So now you have all the information, right? You have the personnel by cost center, and you have the consultant spend by cost center. And so that's what makes up the 26-page handout. But I did provide the analysis on the first 6 pages of this 7-page presentation to give you a feel for the impact of the total reductions in personnel, total reductions in consultant spend. And so again, if you have any questions about the detail, maybe you see something that looks a little off, please send it to John. We'll research it and we'll bring the answer back to you. Yes, Commissioner.
Quick question for you, because I think one of the areas here that we need to be very much aware of in terms of costs and how it melds in with operations is basically our information technology. And that this is a spend that will probably, well, not probably, will constantly have to be made to keep this operation essentially in the game in terms of not only the technical level of its equipment, but also with regards to security, because people are constantly trying to break in. And I think it's important that the board, or let's say each commissioner, be kept aware of the fact that in order for us to keep ourselves current, this is going to be a spend that we're going to have to be, it'll have to be made. And that it will really depend upon several factors. Technological changes, the sophistication of people who are trying to break in, security requirements that may or may not be imposed upon us at both the state and federal level. And I just think that this is, once again, an area where we have to be very, very important that we understand that we just can't look at the numbers, that there's a lot going on there, and that we really have to meld that in with our position, our staff, which I think has done an excellent job in terms of dealing with those areas. But we have to keep aware of that and can't take our eye off of it, because I think we know, for those of us that have been around here for a long time, this can lead to some real disasters. So,
you know, Bob has impressed upon me this, and is, you know, it's hard about hiring a IT expert, and then you have them on board and in perpetuity. There may be five distinct fields where you need expert advice on, and maybe in year 1 you need it from field number 1. And if you hired an employee, you have that field number 1 for forever, but the next year you might need field number 2, and so on and so forth. So hiring a consultant, you still may have the cost of only 1 employee, but you get the benefit of their breadth of experience because they have a number of experts on staff. Whereas if we were to hire them, it might not be the needs we have in year 2 and 3 and beyond. And so there are advantages to hiring experts if you know you're going to have that need in perpetuity. And then there are advantages to hiring consultants when you need their expertise, but then you need that expense to go away when you no longer need it. So thank you.
Yes, if I may, Mr. Chair, just to add to that, so when Bob did his presentation, the one thing we do not want to do is not continue to invest in our IT system. 1998, we didn't do anything until 2020, and we cost us $24 million. We are going to spend, over the next 5 years, we have a 5-year plan. We'll be presenting that to the board very shortly. But we have to continue, start from 2020. We have to start to update our SAP system. We don't want to wait for it to be out of compliance or whatever you want terms Bob would use. But if you can go back to slide 5, Bob, I just want to make this point, and this is important. When you look at these numbers, there's a story behind every number. And if you just simply look at 2014 to 2023, and you see, yes, our staff went down, right? Capital, now this is capital, right? This is all of our engineering staff, all of our inspectors, they're all capitalized, right? So our staffing levels went down, and so did our consultants. Well, think about this. We started planning the tunnel and stopped doing separation in 2013. So 2013, our biggest projects are the tunnel. So obviously, there's less need for inspection. We had a lot of retirements. There's less need for our consultants. We only have a few big consultants that are doing the tunnel design. So it makes sense. There's a story behind these numbers. Now, as I've said, the game has changed. North Hartford has changed everything. What we agreed to in July of 2023, which is to go back to full separation, we added 9 positions this year. Because of that full separation, now we're going to need to ramp up, and we're starting that now. We added people to the utility services and to the construction teams and engineering teams. We're going to need to ramp up for those future projects. We'll be doing this for the next 10 years in North Hartford, and we'll continue to do this work, separation of Hartford forever. But these numbers mean something, and you look at that, and what I see is it's because we were doing just 1 or 2 projects, the tunnel. So, and we're happy to give those explanations or questions, answer any questions you might have.
Thank you.
Good job, Bob.
So we don't have any more questions. This information is basically provided for you to take a look, and I'm sure that people will be going through it. And if we have any questions, we can pass those on to John. Correct, John? Yep. Okay. If there's nothing more in this particular item, thanks, Bob. Really appreciate the work. Item 10, consideration of potential action with regard to settlement of workers' compensation claim. Council?
We're going to have Jamie do that. Let's just keep it general, Jamie, so we don't have to go into executive session.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Commissioner. So this is a claim that had been identified by Workers' Comp Trust and our workers' comp attorney, Brian Wolnitz, that was kind of ripe for settlement. It's a 2014 injury for an employee who had been here for a number of years. He's reached maximum medical improvement, and we actually, at this point, have been able to negotiate with his attorney for a settlement that, at least again, in talking to Workers' Comp Trust and Brian Wolnitz, they're very comfortable is a reasonable settlement for the ongoing claim, and would be full and final settlement of the indemnity and medical.
And this closes the book on this?
This closes the book on it, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Chris Stone. Thank you, Jamie, for that. And just generally, these are the types of cases that we're looking into to see if we can't fashion a resolution so that it gets off the books we stop the ongoing payments, the future payments, both on indemnity and medical. It's a reasonable settlement. It's been not only accepted by, subject to what this body does and the board does, but by the claimant, but also it's the Workers' Comp Commissioner supports it as well.
Anybody have any questions on this? Mr. Curry?
Just one comment, in the resolve section, it says pursuant to section B2F. Whenever we're referencing something like this, could we get a copy of it as part of the packet? So we know what, unless all of us know by heart what B2F is, I don't. The question I have is that in the resolution, it doesn't really say final, full and final. There's final approval by workers' comp, but it doesn't include the language that was introduced with the resolution.
If I may, Commissioner, it
Yes.
is in paragraph 2, at the end of the second sentence, it says, "The tentative agreement is fashioned as a full and final settlement to cap all future indemnity and medical claims."
But it doesn't say that
Yeah,
in the
it's-
resolution.
In the resolution, okay. You just want that incorporated in the resolution? Okay.
Okay.
Is that should be a fairly simple matter? Yes? Okay.
It's not
Do we need an
it's not
amendment?
an
Or do
aware-
we need
It's
to
not an
amend it?
whereas clause.
Okay, all right. Okay,
Wouldn't that be included in the whereas clause?
It's in there in different language.
Language.
The resolved language talks about executing any and all documents necessary to effect settlement of all workers' compensation, indemnity, and medical claims. That is a final agreement, stipulation, the case is over. But we can add clarifying language to the resolution when it comes to
when it goes to the board, okay. Anyone else? May I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Passes.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Are there any general public comments? Once again, it's opportunity for general public comments. There being none, we'll move to item 12, Commissioner requests for future agenda items.
Mr. Chairman, did we put 7 on the agenda?
Yes, we did. Yes. Jamie covered that.
I missed it too, I'm sorry.
No, she did it.
Yeah, we voted on it.
Voted for it too, but.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you did.
It sounded like 6. so
Okay,
it
yeah,
went like that.
no. Once again, Commissioner requests for future agenda items. There being none, I will entertain the appropriate motion.
We'll put that one back on for next item.
Okay.
Next agenda, put that one back on.
Nice meeting.
What time you